All right, let's dive into something I know you've been curious about lately, the Mongols. And we're
Hmm.
not just talking about the horseback conquerors here, right? You want the full picture,
Absolute.
the backstory, the stuff most people gloss over,
Yeah, the good stuff.
the good stuff. And what better place to unearth those hidden gems than, you guessed it, Wikipedia?
Of course.
It's like this giant historical jigsaw puzzle, and today we're piecing together the fascinating, the lesser-known story of the Mongols,
Life it.
starting way back long before Genghis Khan with their roots.
It's true. Their story begins centuries earlier. We're talking about the proto-Mongols.
Sure.
Those groups like the Donghu and the Xiongnu who really laid the groundwork for what would become this powerful empire.
So let's talk Proto-Mongols. The article mentions something called the Tuoba Sacrificial Castle. Any idea what that was all about?
Well, the sacrificial castle is this fascinating glimpse into their early spiritual beliefs. Essentially, it was a platform, likely made of earth and timber, used by the Tuba, who were ancestors of the Mongols, for religious ceremonies.
Right.
While the exact nature of these sacrifices remains unclear,
Okay.
it highlights the importance of ritual and their connection to the divine.
Interesting. So we've got these early glimpses into their beliefs. The article also talks about the Xianmei and their fire ceremonies. What did those involve?
These ceremonies, performed on the vast Mongolian steppe, were about far more than just flames. They were powerful symbols of purification, a way to honor their ancestors and connect with the spirits of the land. Imagine the scene, the crackling fire under the open sky, the chanting, the sense of shared history and identity.
Wow.
These rituals were crucial in binding these early groups together.
It paints a vivid picture. And speaking of important places, we can't forget about Mount Burkhan Khaldun.
Right.
The article mentions it was sacred to the Mongols. What made it so special?
Mount Burkhan Khaldun wasn't just a mountain, it was their spiritual heartland. The Mongols believed it to be the birthplace of their ancestors, a place where the divine and earthly realms intertwined. It was a place of pilgrimage, a source of power, and a potent symbol of their identity. Even Genghis Khan himself is said to have sought refuge and guidance on its slopes.
It's amazing how these ancient beliefs and places continue to resonate for centuries.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that during these early centuries, the Proto-Mongols weren't isolated.
Right?
They were interacting with different empires and cultures, the Xiongnu to the north, the Chinese dynasties to the south.
So it wasn't just about holding on to their own traditions, but also adapting and incorporating new ideas.
Precisely. They were incredibly adept at navigating this complex web of interactions. For example, the Unongnu, known for their equestrian skills, likely influenced early Mongol horsemanship, which, as we know, became a defining aspect of their military might. This ability to learn and adapt from their neighbors, to integrate new knowledge and skills, would prove crucial to their later success.
So these early interactions weren't just historical footnotes, they were shaping the Mongol identity.
Absolutely, and it's this adaptability, this ability to learn and evolve that really sets the stage for understanding the Mongols' rise to power.
It's fascinating how all those early interactions really shaped their journey.
Absolutely.
And speaking of shaping influences, let's talk religion.
Okay.
The Mongols, they had this reputation for religious tolerance,
Right?
which seems, I don't know, kind of unusual for empire builders.
It is unusual, and it's something that often gets simplified in the historical narrative.
Yeah.
Yes, the Mongols were pragmatic.
Right.
A stable empire meant respecting the beliefs of the people you conquered,
Sure.
but their openness to different faiths, it goes deeper than just strategy.
So it wasn't just about, like, keeping the peace. Their own history played a role.
Absolutely. The Wikipedia article kind of hints at this tapestry of faiths that touched different Mongol groups.
Okay.
Shamanism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam.
Wow, that's a lot.
It wasn't a case of one replacing the other. It was more like layers of belief,
Okay.
sometimes overlapping, sometimes existing alongside each other.
So walk us through this.
Okay.
Where do we see these layers appearing?
Well, we already touched on the Xianbei and their early encounters with Buddhism. Centuries before the Mongol Empire rose, some of these groups were already exploring Buddhist teachings.
Wow.
Then, later, during the peak of the Mongol Empire, you have figures like Kublai Khan
Oh, yeah.
embracing Buddhism, even declaring it the state religion of the Yuan dynasty in China.
But that didn't wipe out the other faiths.
Not at all.
Wow.
The Mongols, under Kublai Khan and others, continued to allow religious freedom for Christians, Muslims, and those who practice shamanism.
So it was like live and let live.
In a sense, yes.
Yeah.
This tolerance is often attributed to Genghis Khan's Yasa Code,
Oh, yeah, the Yasuke.
which, while shrouded in some mystery,
Right.
is believed to have advocated for freedom of belief.
It's pretty remarkable, especially for that time period.
It is.
The article mentions this fascinating detail about Munka Khan, Kublai Khan's brother, organizing a religious debate.
Oh, yeah.
What was that all about?
That's a great example of how the Mongols went beyond mere tolerance to genuine curiosity about different belief systems.
Really?
Monka Khan gathered scholars from various religions, Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, for this grand debate.
Like a religious summit?
Yeah, we could say that.
Wow.
It wasn't about declaring a winner. It was about understanding these different perspectives on the divine.
I can only imagine the conversations that must have taken place.
Right.
So they were engaging with these religions intellectually, but they also played a role in preserving them, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the Mongol monks who were instrumental in copying and spreading Buddhist texts.
Exactly. They weren't just passive observers.
Right.
These Mongol monks were vital in maintaining Buddhist scholarship, particularly in Tibet, where they helped to preserve the faith amidst a turbulent period.
Wow.
Their monasteries became centers of learning, ensuring that these texts, these traditions, survive for future generations.
That's a far cry from the image of ruthless conquerors, isn't it?
It really is.
It speaks to a more nuanced view of their legacy. Of course, not all interactions were positive.
Right.
The article also mentions the impact of Russian expansion on Buryat religious practices.
That's an important point.
Yeah.
While the Mongols themselves were often tolerant, their history is intertwined with other empires and forces that weren't always so open-minded.
True.
In the case of the Buryats, a Mongol group living around Lake Baikal, the influx of Russian Orthodox Christianity brought about pressure to convert,
Oh, I see.
leading to this complex blending of faiths and, in some cases, the suppression of traditional practices.
It's a reminder that even within the story of tolerance, there are layers of cultural exchange that weren't always equal or straightforward.
Right.
It makes you think about the lasting impacts of those encounters, how they continue to shape belief systems even today. It really does make you think.
It does.
And speaking of complex legacies, let's shift gears a bit from like these grand narratives of empires and religions to something a bit more, personal.
Right.
The daily lives of the Mongols.
Yeah,
Even a Wikipedia article can offer glimpses into this, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
So where do we even begin?
Well, the article touches upon the concept of kinship, which was paramount in Mongol society.
Okay.
It wasn't just about blood ties, though.
Right.
It was this complex system that really underpinned their entire social structure.
Right. The article mentions like elder and younger clans.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, that kind of threw me for a loop. Can you break that down?
Of course. So it's not about the actual age of the clan,
Okay.
but rather their position within this intricate web of Mongol kinship.
Right.
It's all tied to marriage practices.
Okay.
Let's say you have two clans, the Borjigin and the Barlas.
Okay.
If, over generations, the Borjigin consistently give their daughters in marriage to the Barlas, they become the elder clan in relation to the Barlas.
So it's about who marries who.
Exactly.
And that determines who has like the higher social standing.
Precisely.
Got it.
The elder clan would generally enjoy a certain level of prestige and influence.
Okay.
This hierarchy, though subtle, played a vital role in maintaining order and resolving disputes, both within and between clans.
It sounds like something that evolved over time, right?
It likely did.
Did these traditions eventually become like formalized?
That's the fascinating part. The Yasa, that legal code attributed to Genghis Khan,
Right.
wasn't just about conquering. It was about codifying existing traditions.
Okay.
Many scholars believe that inheritance laws within the Yasa,
Right.
which dictated how property and livestock were passed down,
Okay.
were likely based on these long-held customs surrounding kinship and clan hierarchy.
So Genghis Khan, in a way, was formalizing a system that already existed?
Precisely.
Wow.
And these traditions went even deeper than just social hierarchy.
Okay.
The article mentions Mongol kinship terminology,
Yeah.
which is incredibly complex and nuanced,
I bet.
with specific terms for different types of cousins, in-laws,
Oh, yeah.
and even adopted relatives.
Wow, that's really interesting.
It highlights how central these familial relationships were to their culture.
Absolutely. And speaking of identity, let's jump forward a bit to the Mongol people today.
Right.
The article includes a map that shows Mongol groups scattered all across Asia. Khalkha, Buryat, Kalmyk. Some names, I'll admit, are more familiar than others,
Sure.
but it's a reminder that there's no one Mongol experience.
That's a crucial point.
Right.
The Mongol legacy isn't confined to just one place or one story.
Exactly.
The descendants of the Mongol Empire are a diverse group shaped by centuries of migration, cultural exchange, and, yes, political upheaval as well.
Yeah.
The scattering of these groups, as we see on the map, reflects the ebb and flow of power,
Right.
the impact of decisions made centuries ago.
It makes you wonder about the journeys that these individual groups took, the challenges they faced, the ways they preserved their identity. There's just so much to ponder here. I mean, we started with a Wikipedia article,
Right.
and we ended up with like a whole world of fascinating insights.
That's the beauty of a deep dive like this.
Yeah.
It's not just about uncovering facts, it's about sparking curiosity, prompting these new questions.
And here's one to leave you with. We've seen how adaptable the Mongols were,
Right.
how they absorbed and transformed influences throughout their history.
Absolutely.
So in a world grappling with, well, frankly, globalization and cultural exchange like never before,
Yeah.
what might a modern Mongol Renaissance look like? And I'm not talking about empire building,
No, of course not.
but in terms of art, ideas, influence, what could that look like?
That's a fascinating question.
Right.
And honestly, one that deserves its own deep dive.
Absolutely.
It speaks to the enduring legacy of the Mongols, a legacy that continues to evolve and surprise us centuries later.
It's been such a pleasure unraveling these layers of history with you.
Likewise.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you.
Remember, sometimes the most fascinating stories are hidden in plain sight.
They are.
Until next time, keep exploring.